Greetings and welcome to an LGR thing, and well, let's just go ahead and get this out of here. This thing is the Kenwood 72-speed TrueX CD-ROM drive, introduced in October of 1999 for a price of $129.95, at least here in the United States in its initial launch window. And it doesn't look like anything terribly special externally here. I mean, effectively, it is just a compact disk read-only memory drive used for reading and installing software on a PC like any other CD drive back then. But this model right here, the UCR 421, stands alone in the pantheon of CD-ROM drives, with Kenwood claiming it to be the fastest drive on Earth. And yes, that is the same Kenwood that is probably more known for their home and car audio equipment, but obviously they have dabbled in PC stuff as well. And they started selling these TrueX drives in 1998 with the multi-beam 40-speed plus CD-ROM, but the 72X was the one that received the most attention, being that it was the fastest CD-ROM that Kenwood had made, and it's the fastest CD-ROM period. I've only come across two after looking for about 8 years. Not only are these getting very hard to find at all, but it can be rather tough to find one working, at least in my experience. But when they are functioning correctly, Kenwood claimed that you would get a blazing fast transfer rate of 6.75 to 10.8 megabytes per second across the entire disk. And it did this while only spinning, and this is key, around 2700 to 5100 RPM, unlike the next fastest drives back then, the so-called 56-speed max drives that rotated at over 11,000 RPM. This was pretty impressive stuff, not only because it would be quieter than 56-speed drives, but spinning CDs for too fast for too long can result in, well, no more CD. Kenwood accomplished this speed by reading 7 tracks of data in parallel, which is where Zen Research's TrueX technology came into play. So let's up the nerdiness level, shall we? Because TrueX still used a single laser beam inside the drive to pull this off, but instead of shining directly onto the CD, it's focused through a diffraction grating that splits the laser into 7 beams. The beams are then narrowed through a collimator lens, and then focused through an objective lens to read the pits and lands on the disc itself. These then reflect back through those same lenses, bounce off a beam splitter, and are focused through another lens into a multi-beam detector array. The signals are then processed through a RISC-based ASIC chipset that processes everything before sending it off to the CPU of your PC, eliminating additional processing overhead. The UCR 421 received plenty of positive reviews on launch, earning the PC Stats Editor's Choice Award and a 10 out of 10 on the Hot Hardware Heat Meter, calling it absolutely flawless. But ever since then, I've read differing opinions from users saying it wasn't quite all that, with owners of the device saying that it actually didn't read much faster than competing CD-ROMs, that it couldn't read burned CDs, that it had problems ripping audio CDs to MP3s, and was absurdly loud at full speed and vibrated non-stop. And also that it had problems streaming full motion video from certain games like Diablo 2. So I want to test every single one of those things and see how it is in my experience. But before we get this installed into a Windows 98 PC, let's go ahead and take a brief look at the hardware specifics itself and some documentation. I mean, it's nothing terribly special, but I feel like it. So yeah, from right to left here, we have an eject button, a nice little LED for indicating things with an LED. We have a volume wheel here for the analog audio from CDs, as well as a headphone out. You know, typical stuff that you would see on a CD-ROM drive of the time period. A 4-pin Molex connector for power, the IDE connection, and then we have the jumpers over here for cable select stuff, and then some audio interfaces, and we'll be using this 4-pin one for analog audio, so if we want to, we can read analog audio and get Redbook audio off CD-ROMs. And we also got some documentation. I never had the box for this. I've never actually seen the box for this, but one of the units that I got did indeed come with some docs. So let's check this out. We have a quick install guide here, which is pretty quick. Step 1, step 2, that's it. you plug it in, daggone it, and that is what you do, because it's effectively just a CD-ROM. Same goes for the manual. There's nothing terribly interesting in here. It's just like, you know, thanks for buying our crap. here's some very basic stuff about very basic high-level information on CD-ROMs and what to do, and there's no special software required to operate your 72-speed Truex CD-ROM drive. Of course not. That's just standard Windows stuff. You plug it in, things work. Unless they don't, but they probably will work. So yeah, let's go ahead and get this installed into a Windows 98 PC. Let's get the lazy green giant opened up and ready for some blazing fast Truex goodness. It just slides into the second slot down, screws in tightly, and we get the requisite cables connected, and that's that. Looks like it could do with a little retro bright now that it's up against the other CD drive, but whatever, yellow or not, it's ready to go. Oh, and remember that 56-speed max drive I mentioned earlier? I just so happen to have one of those installed as well, so we'll be able to directly compare the Kenwood to one of the next fastest CD-ROMs available. And yeah, in terms of setup, that's all we really need to do here. Windows 98 SE will take care of the rest. Once again, there are no drivers or software, so we're ready to begin testing. And while I will be showing a proper benchmark in a bit, let's do a real-world kind of test with Diablo 2 here. First, I'm going to see how the 56-speed drive fares in terms of performing a standard single-player installation, which consists of 650 megabytes from the first disk. And on the traditional 56-speed drive here, it took 2 minutes and 52 seconds to copy everything over to the PC's flash drive storage. A pretty typical time. I also wanted to check out the FMV and a bit of gameplay itself, since reviews back then said that the Truex drives had trouble with Diablo 2 in particular, and I just want to establish a baseline for how things should look here. And yep, looks and runs just fine. Alright, gonna go ahead and uninstall the game, as well as remove the temporary installation files and anything left over by the installer, and then restart to make sure we get a cleaner test. And alright, it's time to whip out the Kenwood. What was that? Alright. So it seems this drive's gears have gone a bit shoddy. Far as I could tell though, it's just the tray mechanism itself and nothing else, so it shouldn't affect our testing, which begins with installing Diablo 2 again. And this time around, wow, you can immediately tell it's going much faster with the exact same installation. It ended up finishing everything in 1 minute 1 second, nearly 3 times faster than the 56-speed drive. Now for the FMV intro cinematic, and well, it works perfectly fine. No skips or pauses or broken audio or anything. Same goes for the gameplay. It's just Diablo 2 and it's awesome. On further inspection though, it appears that my drive actually had the latest firmware applied to it at some point, version 226, which Kenwood released to specifically address things like Diablo 2 playability. Alright, nice job Kenwood, and previous owner of this drive. Next, it's time for a simple test of sound and vibration, and once again it's back to the 56-speed drive, which is absolutely terrifying. Seriously, when this thing reaches full speed, it's one of the loudest, most concerning optical drives I've ever experienced. And as for the Truex drive, it's just lovely. It's barely any louder than the CPU and power supply fans of the PC itself. And really I expected as much, seeing as the Truex drives were built to spin at less than half the velocity of a 56-speed drive. Let's get a bit more hard data here though, and for that we'll continue using some of the Nero software suite I have from back in the day, specifically Nero CD DVD Speed, which performs an array of enlightening tests to show us the transfer rate, seek times, CPU usage, and more. I let it go repeatedly on both drives, and once I got some reliable results, I had it generate this handy list of stats. Let's look at the transfer rate first, or the effective speed rating which each drive could pull off. This is the 56-speed drive here, and as you can see, even though it's rated to go as high as 56x, it never actually attained that, with an average of about 36x. And that's typical for CD-ROMs. The speed rating in the box is just the maximum theoretical transfer rate. And look at this graph, it shows some interesting stuff as well. And being that this is a CAV, or constant angular velocity drive, the yellow line stays flat, while the green line for transfer rate increases as it moves across the disk. And that's because on traditional drives like this, the closer the laser is to the inner portion of the CD, the lower the attainable data rate, since the drive has to spin faster to process the same amount of data at the outside sections of the disk. And now look at the TrueX drive by comparison. Not only is the average transfer rate far higher at 65x, but it also bumps right up against its claimed maximum of 72 speed. And the graph looks entirely different, with the green line reaching higher speeds faster and the yellow line decreasing as the drive reaches maximum transfer rate. And due to the TrueX system and the fact that this is not a CAV but is actually a PCAV, or partial constant angular velocity drive, those 7 beams can read much more of the inner and outer sections of the disk at once, and the closer it comes to the end of the disk, the slower the disk spins, resulting in fewer revolutions per minute, but increased data transfer speeds. In short, this thing is awesome! The results continue to impress when it comes to burst rate, showing the maximum burst of file transfer speed at 1784 kilobytes per second on the 56-speed drive, while the 72-speed attains a whopping 9184 kilobytes per second. When it's hitting on all cylinders, so to speak, this TrueX drive is over 5 times faster than the next fastest CD-ROM drives. That is ridiculous. Talk about living up to the hype. Intriguingly though, when it comes to things like seek time, CPU usage, and spin up and spin down stats, the 56-speed drive is overall a bit quicker and more efficient. Not by much, it's certainly nothing I'd notice in normal everyday usage, but there it is. And it's worth pointing out the 56-speed drive I'm using is actually a few years newer than the Kenwood, made in 2002, so perhaps its own internal processing is a little better. Oh, and I also wanted to test its ability to rip audio CDs to MP3s, although since now I know it has the latest firmware, I expect it'll do just fine, and sure enough it does, ripping to 320 kbps files with ease at around 3 megabytes per second. Finally, there's the CDRW situation, and well, even with the new firmware, it still wasn't able to read my rewritable discs. Granted, this isn't terribly uncommon for CD-ROMs from 1999 or thereabouts. Even the 56-speed drive had problems, although it did get there eventually, more than the TrueX could say. Still, that's a small price to pay for such an objectively faster drive like this, and I'm half tempted to keep it in this PC all the time. I don't know how reliable it is with continued usage. I've only used this one for about a dozen hours, and as I mentioned earlier, I had to go through a couple of these to get one that worked. But when it is working, it's just amazing in every way. Well, okay, maybe not that way, but everything else. What a beast. And if you enjoyed this look at this fantastically quick CD-ROM drive, then perhaps you'd like to look at some of my other stuff, which covers topics as diverse as quicker things and slower things. I don't know, man, I just cover hardware and software and stuff. This is what I do here in LGR. New videos every week. And as always, thank you very much for watching.